Welcome to the ER Break Room, the University of Florida Department of Emergency Medicine's podcast. In here, we get to know each other, celebrate our achievements, and highlight our initiatives. I'm your host, Michael Petrauskas. Welcome to match season. Starting off with the already completed fellowship match, this episode highlights where our current residents ended up, and then delves into the life and career of one of our esteemed faculty members, which includes involvement in our EMS fellowship. In the next episode, I will get a hot take on the residency match from one of our residency leaders. Stay tuned. Now, on to Highs of the Month. Matt Shaw and Cassie Stitch were awarded a Superior Accomplishment Award at the divisional level. Matt has been instrumental in helping rebuild our department's research mission, and Cassie has contributed significantly to the MotoMeds project in Ghana with Dr. Torben Becker, as well as other projects. Well deserved to both of you. The Pediatric EM Fellowship received its continuing accreditation. Congratulations to the faculty and fellows who have made this possible. These include inaugural program director Dr. Tricia Swan, Dr. Maritza Plaza, Dr. Carolyn Holland, Dr. Cameron Busk, Zach Frey, and Will Mitchell. Dr. Colleen Gutman and Cassie Stitch published a paper in Pediatric Emergency Care titled Pediatric Emergency Physicians' Knowledge, Attitudes, and Behaviors Regarding Confidential Adolescent Care. And then Dr. Gutman published again, along with Dr. Rose Fernandez, in the esteemed Journal of Pediatrics, a clinically relevant study titled Contaminant Organism Growth in Febrile Infants at Low Risk for Invasive Bacterial Infection. Bravo to you all. Dr. Mike Marchick was named the University of Florida Graduate Medical Education Unsung Hero of the Year. This award is given to one UF faculty member per year who is nominated by House staff for going above and beyond their duties to improve the learning environment. Dr. Marchick will be presented this award formally at the UF College of Medicine Celebration of Excellence in Medical Education. Congratulations, Mike, so very well deserved. Dr. Carolyn Holland will be performing with the Gainesville Pops in their annual spring concert on April 6th at First United Methodist Church in downtown Gainesville. As I've mentioned on this podcast previously, Dr. Holland plays bass clarinet with this incredibly talented group. The concert is free. Check it out. And since we're on the topic of Dr. Holland, I was going through my mail the other day, and I came across a flyer for a conference on emergency medicine and acute care in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Intrigued about maybe attending this conference, I flipped through the itinerary and noticed that the highly esteemed Dr. Amo Matu is co-hosting and presenting, and then I noticed that our very own Dr. Holland is one of the select few lecturers. Awesome job, Dr. Holland. Way to combine and squeeze a Costa Rica trip into an amazing presentation opportunity. And who knows, maybe some of your colleagues will be in the audience. And then finally, Doctor Day is coming up on Thursday, March 28th. I had to work last year and missed the festivities, but I heard the lunch spread was incredible. So don't miss out on the breakfast at the psychiatric hospital and the lunch outside on the terrace between the two South Towers. Now, on to my guests. My first guest today is Chief Resident Justin Sauter, who I am bringing on the podcast to talk about the fellowship match for this year's senior residents. Justin, where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest, a little suburb of St. Louis, and went there through high school, stuck around, and went to a private small school in Iowa, actually. And then I took one gap year. I was a scribe in the ED, like many others. And then I went to medical school in Kansas City University, one of the Diaz schools out there. And then there was no clinical rotations were kind of scattered for us. About 50% of people stayed there, just with 3 med schools being there. It was pretty crowded. And then I had some family move down to Florida. So I decided to come down to Florida for clinical rotations down at Fort Myers, which turned out being like the best move ever because during COVID, when we had some time off and everybody was kind of locked in, I at least had the beach and the pool and stuff like that. So that was pretty nice.
That's a big win for you. I guess I wouldn't have guessed that you were Midwestern in your roots. I don't know. You almost sound like you have I'm not sure how to place your accent. And I'm from Illinois, so I feel like I would take one to know one type of a thing, but I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have guessed you like a Northeasterner or something.
I've never heard that I had an accent before, and then bam, I came here and everyone said it. So I guess you just go somewhere else and you'll
Yeah,
find it.
very interesting. And then what? Okay, so just for the Midwest buffs out there, what high school out in St. Louis and what college in Iowa?
Yeah, so I went to Fort Zumwalt West High School
Okay,
there in O'Fallon, Missouri, and then I went to
okay,
Co College up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and
Cedar
played
Rapids.
some
Okay,
tennis, and I dove up there as well. So
really? You were a diver? Very interesting.
yes,
Huh,
gained some
huh.
flex, gained some flexibility that I've since lost.
Yeah, well, that's super interesting. So you get, I mean, I feel like divers and maybe gymnasts, like they have this awareness of body and space. Like very a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, it was a new experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right on. Well, okay, so let's get to it. Okay, so we can start with you. So you applied to fellowship, and tell me where'd you apply to? What did you apply for, and then what'd you match in?
Yeah, so I am doing critical care here at UF.
Hmm.
I actually applied to 17 places and did interviews at all those places,
Gosh, that's
which
horrible.
which was a lot on the tail end of our second year.
Yeah.
Just in the grind of core two, and a lot of them were like after overnights, and they were all on Zoom, so like 8 to 12 on
Oh,
Zoom after.
oh
So
my
it was
gosh.
a lot, but I was
Yeah.
kind of stuck in a quandary with I know we have a great program here, but I was kind
Hmm.
of juggling with if I should, go test the waters, see different kind of hospitals, see how different things run. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I ended up choosing here because I knew we had the good program. I knew what I was
Hmm.
getting. I
Hmm.
knew the hospital, so there wouldn't be a huge learning curve, and then I could stay doing ED attending shifts while I'm doing my fellowship. So that way I
Yeah.
kind of wouldn't lose those skills while I'm still
Yeah.
doing other stuff. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
happy medium for me.
Very cool. And also, you mentioned your family is in Florida. Where are they?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
family's in over in Jacksonville, so
Yeah.
it's nice to go see them,
Yeah.
every
Exactly.
few weekends.
Yeah. You got family around too, and you get the beach and stuff. So that'd be good. Wonderful. So we'll be seeing your face around. You'll be attending your current co-residence next year, which I'm sure will be an interesting transition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. And
Yeah.
I mean, you pick up like ED, moonlighting shifts your first year.
Hmm.
A lot of them don't seem to do it, but I'm a heavy moonlighter. Like now, I usually pick up,
Mm.
6 or 7 shifts a month, so I'll
Wow.
probably be doing that some more, I would think.
Wow. Wow. What are you saving for?
I save some of it away. I spend some of it on silly stuff, and
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah,
Trips. Yeah. Okay.
trips. Yes.
All right. All right. So okay. So that's that. You got you down, and then how many more in your class applied to fellowship?
Yeah, so we have three others
Yeah.
for
Tell
sure
me about them.
growing into fellowship.
Yeah.
So our first one, interesting one, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a hyperbarics fellowship, which there's not too
Mm-hmm.
too many programs, but
Mm-hmm.
he interviewed at a lot of them.
Yep.
And it sounds like there's a stark kind of variety in the kind of different trainings you get and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
Yep.
he ended up at one of the programs that is one of the top ones for hyperbarics, is what he's doing it in. And he seems pretty happy with that, and to be
Yeah.
going out to New Orleans and
Absolutely.
going for the change of pace there.
Absolutely. And I have to interject here. I don't know if you knew this about me. I did my residency in New Orleans at LSU. So I
Nice.
was
Okay.
very well aware of the hyperbarics fellowship there. And
Nice.
so Montana is walking into some really an incredible place to train. And also he had reminded me of this, and I had forgotten this, that it's actually a
Yeah.
dual fellowship. He also gets wound care as well as part of his training, which is great. Great skill to have, and,
Yeah.
and he'll definitely have incredible experience just with there was just a lot of people with diabetes and vascular disease in New Orleans, and so just a lot of just really impressive wounds. So
Yeah.
he will learn a lot and also enjoy the wonderful city that is New Orleans. So
Yeah.
very cool.
And he already has this big plan of owning his own, hyperbarics chamber
That's
and
great. I can see it. He'll be
living.
a little businessman,
Yeah,
you know.
he will.
Okay, one down, two more to go. Two down, I should say.
Uh,
You and Montana, two more to go. What do you got? What's next?
Another one is Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
He is going up
Aaron
to Pun Punaker, sorry.
Poniker. Yeah.
Uh,
Good
yeah,
crew.
he's going up to University of Virginia for pain medicine fellowship.
Really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it
Is
was
it? Talk
actually
about that more. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that was a traditionally like super hard fellowship for emergency medicine applicants to get into.
Right.
And actually, he was gearing up to apply for the next year. Like he just used his elective month
Mm-hmm.
to do a rotation here at UF to kind of get his feet in the door and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, they had their match, and somehow a few spots were open, and he kind of just slid right in there and
Wow.
made some calls the day of and got
Yeah.
in there.
Incredible.
Which usually, like EM people, like 3 years ago, they could apply, they wouldn't get in.
Yeah.
But it's the anesthesia job market has helped us with it
Yeah.
flourishing so much. Not many people are doing the fellowship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with the ICU. Technically, mine's through anesthesia, but both of those
Gotcha.
fellowships, as many anesthesia people aren't going into fellowship because just staying in the OR is so lucrative for them. So those spots are opened up to us essentially.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, is it acute pain? Would it be a lot of like blocks and things?
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, acute
Yeah.
pain, like clinic, doing
Yeah.
blocks, other kinds of procedures and stuff.
Wow. Incredible. That's very cool. I did not know that about him. So very cool. And then one left. What do you got?
Yes, Kendra Maple.
Mm-hmm.
She will be going to University of Arkansas for ultrasound fellowship.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. I interviewed at University of Arkansas for a residency. I was so impressed by I guess their system, their department. I thought that was really a really cool place and also beautiful. Like beautiful. Like who knew? Like Little Rock, right? Is I'm
Just
guessing is
adding,
you don't even know, but
yeah,
yeah, it was like wow, this is a really cool place and wow, no, I think she'll be really happy there. I thought it was a really
yeah.
good place to be. So, well, very cool. Any parting thoughts for now that you know this is your chance on the podcast? I guess you'll be seeing a lot of us. Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, no, I think it's just, kind of important early on just to see where your interests are and then, just stick out an ear kind of in that way, like, gravitate
Hmm.
towards the faculty that are kind of have those similar interests. And
Hmm.
I'm sure kind of wherever people are at, those people will hold on to you and give you the experience you want. You just got to show a little interest. And
Yeah.
especially at our program, you
Yep.
show the faintest interest and they'll be all for trying to help get you where you need to go. So I think
Absolutely.
that's really nice.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Justin, thank you for coming on, and I
Yeah,
appreciate your
of
words.
course. Thanks,
All
Dr.
right. Take care.
Petroskas.
Today's featured guest is Dr. Dave Meurer, who is the medical director of Shands Care, and he is also core program faculty of the EMS Fellowship. I am doing a little bit of a fellowship theme today, so it was appropriate to bring Dave on. And then finally, Dave has been with this department, which I'm guessing maybe longer than anyone else that's here currently, but we'll get to that later. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. Welcome to the ER Break Room podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
I do appreciate you coming on because I've just kind of done some snooping as I like to do, and I found lots of things that I want to ask you about today. So let's start at the beginning. You were born or you're from Biloxi, Mississippi?
Yes, but I don't really remember a whole lot about it. My dad was in the Air Force, and so we were stationed various places, lived someplace a year and a half, 2 years, whether we needed to or not, and moved on down the road. I was born in Biloxi.
Mm-hmm.
I did go. Dad came back for a school there, and I did go to the third grade in Biloxi.
Really?
And kind of irony or serendipities, my best friend next door neighbor I didn't see him after the third grade, and we finally crossed paths here in Gainesville. It was after I'd come on here as faculty, and he was a family medicine resident back when Alachua General Hospital was open. So
Really?
that was kind of a wild, not see somebody for a while and all of a sudden see them again.
Oh my gosh. Did you just remember the name how did that even, I'm not sure I'd remember my third grade classmates.
He was a good buddy. So I remembered him. I couldn't
Wow.
believe that the name was the same until I said, "Did you live next door to somebody in Biloxi?" And it turned out yes. So that was kind of crazy.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really neat. I actually I spent 2 years on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, way back, right out after college, teaching high school. And I lived in Ocean Springs, and I taught in Gulfport. So I drove right through Biloxi every single day along the beach there, and I had a roommate, a couple of roommates that taught in Biloxi. So I'm kind of familiar with the area. I'm very fond of the area too. So that's neat that you have that kind of experience, having spent a little bit of time there. So you say you moved around a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, where did you go? Where are some of the places that you lived as a child?
Like I said, we moved here or there. I remember I did first and second grade in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Third grade was in Biloxi. Fourth and fifth grade was in the Philippines at Clark Air Base. Sixth grade was in upstate New York. Dad was in a master's program at the University of Rochester. We got a house in a very small rural town out there, then to Kansas City, or just outside of Kansas City, for junior high school, and then went back to high school in the Philippines and graduated over there.
Wow. What is like, I guess this just was your normal. I mean, it's almost surreal to someone maybe who doesn't move a lot, but to you, it was just your life and normal. What kind of effect do you think that has on a person, or how new does it? I mean, does anywhere feel like home, or I don't know? Very interesting.
I think you probably adapt to trying to fit in and meet friends. I remembered in high school, I kind of realized that, moving from one area to another, sometimes the language was a little bit different, the slang. And I found out that was very, very plastic. You would tend to adopt that quite rapidly.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But, I always felt home because my family was always there. So
that's fantastic.
We always had that.
Yeah.
That was good. And it was good to see. Oh, I'm sorry. It was good to see a lot of different places. I have a little bit of a philosophy that, and I would challenge you maybe to ask some of the global medicine people, but I think people that grew up exclusively in this country need to see how the rest of the world is. It gives you a very, very different perspective, and it gives you an appreciation of things that sometimes I don't think people would otherwise have.
Oh, that's super wise advice. I think and I do actually have a plan to interview some of the global health people coming up here in the late spring, summer. But and then you were in the Philippines. How did that affect? I mean, as a child being there, what was that like, and how did that affect your worldview?
Well, again, we got to see how, if you will, the rest of the world lives. The first time when I was in grade school, we lived off base. The community where we lived was primarily the service people or the support people as well, but it led to some interesting things. They killed a cobra out in the backyard, and I would challenge most Americans don't have cobras crawling around in their yard. The second time we lived on base, which was cool because it was close to high school, so I could get around on my bicycle and see and do stuff that I wanted a little bit better. Then when we lived off base, we lived about 5 miles and didn't really get around on my bike much then.
I gotcha. So maybe this killing the cobra maybe sparked your interest for future emergency medicine topics.
It might have. Well, one of the unique experiences and opportunities I've had here at UF, now that we're talking about cobras, was we had a cobra from up north that needed an endoscopy done at the vet school. And for them to be able to come in, they wanted to have a special plan. They had a dedicated Shands Care ambulance on standby. We had to make arrangements for antivenom to be available for them to do an endoscopy on the cobra. They were actually more concerned about an accidental bite while manipulating the scope. But just one of the unique experiences I've had here.
Oh my gosh. So this snake had, an endoscopy? What was the need for the endoscopy with the snake?
He wasn't gaining weight appropriately.
Wow. That is really funny. That's pretty cool. That's something that I think is very, very unique to the University of Florida.
Yeah.
So tell me about you traveled around the United States and the world, and then you went to your undergraduate experience. Where'd you go for that?
I kind of had a broken undergraduate experience. After having seen some things and grown up watching Jacques Cousteau specials, I was going to become a marine biologist, and I went to the Florida Institute of Technology. Now they call it Florida Tech, down in Melbourne, Florida, and they had a sub degree in marine biology, and that's what I wanted to do. And unfortunately, when I hit my senior year, I decided I really enjoyed what I was learning in classes, but I hated doing research, and I hated doing other people's research. That's interesting because that's where my interest in EMS came out. While I was there, I started to work with a volunteer ambulance service. First as just an attendant, and then as an emergency medical technician and a crew chief on a basic life support service ambulance. And when I graduated, I got a job working in EMS. While I was working there, I met somebody who was going to Florida State University to get into a program called PIMS, Program in Medical Sciences, which due to the politics of the time, they weren't going to put a medical school in Tallahassee. But they had this program where you would attend your first year of medical school in a slightly different format at FSU, and then transfer down to the University of Florida. So I got a few more classes at FSU, applied to the PIMS program, got accepted, did my first year up there, and then transferred down to UF.
Wow, that is crazy how you start off wanting to be a Jacques Cousteau type and then ended up as a paramedic and then a doctor. I mean, that's pretty interesting. But I'm sure those experiences as a paramedic, definitely, I'm sure that had an impact on you and what you do today and your interests. Is there anything specific about EMS and being a paramedic in pre-hospital setting that really appeals to you, or?
It's one, trying to meet people in their time of need, and two, it's kind of like I said about folks who grew up in this country should see the rest of the world. Folks who work in a hospital probably ought to see what goes on before you get there. What it's like to be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on your belly in a ditch trying to get somebody out of a car. Sometimes just the situations you get into. Quite some time ago, certainly before shootings seemed to be as common as they are nowadays, I can remember being first on scene to some shootings, and some very excited people had a shotgun pointed at me once trying to take care of a patient in diabetic coma.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a different world, and I try to cut some EMS folks some slack when they can't always dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Absolutely, Dave. And I, I think back to my rotation in EMS in New Orleans when I was in residency, and I just, I was expecting to see a lot, and it was like blew past my expectations in terms of just my eyes being opened, and all of a sudden things started making sense about, now I understand why this patient maybe can't get their medication or something, or they can't get to a pharmacy or their doctor's appointment. Like they have so many other challenges right now, and you hit the nail on the head there with that. Like I have the utmost respect for what paramedics do and their job and how tough it is and what they have to work with in the situations and circumstances, and putting this, like you said, putting themselves even in danger at times. So it's pretty remarkable and exciting.
Yeah.
So then you went from Florida State and then the University of Florida. So then that was your first time stepping into the University of Florida, correct? Then at that point for medical school.
Yes.
So okay. So then what was your experience like? Do you have any fond or defining memories from UF as a medical student?
I won't say I have any particularly fond memories. I have some good friends like everybody else. That's a very busy, dedicated time of your life, long hours, working hard, kind of deal. But I do have some friends that I don't keep in touch with as much as I'd like to, but do occasionally reach out to. I really, I'm glad I went to UF. I think I got an excellent education here. Maybe just kind of another example we used to have a hyperbaric chamber here, and
cool.
they had the hyperbaric chamber came straight from NASA. It was from the Apollo program, and back when there was early manned space flight, Disney had not hit Orlando, so Orlando was a much smaller city, and NASA had chosen UF to be the receiving site for astronauts in case of a contingency. And they drove up this huge multi-place hyperbaric chamber that was here for years. It was well used because we're right in the middle of cave diving country.
Yes.
So people who go deep and long, sometimes on multi-gases, would get bent or have some problems, and they would come here. But anyway, as a medical student, I took the hyperbaric attendant class because they were looking for people that they could maybe hire part-time. I never got hired, but I got to take a dive to 165 feet in the hyperbaric chamber and got to find out firsthand how much you giggle with nitrogen narcosis, trying to take a blood pressure on the patient. So that is a kind of fun memory from medical school.
Really cool. Yes, that is crazy. You get to do that as a medical student. That is wonderful. That's really cool. And what happened to the hyperbarics chamber? It just got decommissioned at some point or something?
A decision was made very high to get rid of it. It was interesting. The department sent 5 of us to San Antonio to take a hyperbarics course so that we could do the emergency stuff, the after hours carbon monoxide or diving injuries and things like that. But they elected to sell it, and they sold it and took it away. So it's no longer here. We do have monoplace hyperbaric chambers for wound care at Spring Hill, but it's not quite the same thing as this large large multi-place chamber where you could treat a critically ill patient.
Right. Yeah, I came from an institution like I mentioned before, New Orleans, LSU, and the University Medical Center there, where it kind of something similar has evolved, where it used to have something more robust in multiple places, and care was being performed in the chamber, and now it's just kind of a wound care type of a thing. So, but that's a great experience that you had at UF. Wow, that's really neat. So then you went through and you were forged through the trials of med school, and then For residency, so back when you were going into emergency medicine, well, first of all, I guess what made you choose? I guess maybe was the paramedic experience,
it was being a medic and wanting to do more, having a good idea of what needed to be done, but limited by the scope of practice.
Yeah.
And I found a mentor in the emergency department up in Tallahassee he actually was the medical director for the BLS service. I transferred over to an ALS service after I got my paramedic license. And again, we had another physician. I think he also went to UF. His name was Lynn Pereiro. But between Dr. Pereiro and Dr. Sherman and some others, I went into medicine to be an EM doc.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. And so then you did your residency in Jacksonville at UF, correct? But then it wasn't even called UF yet, right?
Well, it was funny. The year before I started, my senior year as in medical school, they signed the first agreement. Now, it wasn't called Shands UF. It was called University Medical Center. But the affiliation with UF had started the year before I went there. So
Gotcha.
It was UF from when I transferred down from Tallahassee to Gainesville. I've been pretty much working for UF.
UF consistently, yeah.
Yeah.
And then was that still the time when you had to do a prelim year in emergency medicine?
You didn't, but this program had that. There were a bunch of 3-year programs and 4-year programs. So I did a internal medicine prelim program, and then EM was 2, 3, 4.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of fun because doing 2, 3, 4, I think it gave us more opportunities for electives and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I came from a 4-year program, and that's the experience I had as well. Although my intern year was in emergency medicine as opposed to internal medicine. But I'm sure there's so much to learn there. Seeing them, I mean, so much of what we do is internal medicine based, and even we provide a lot of primary care to a lot of people. So I'm sure that was very helpful.
Yeah, and learning the computer and to work the system and the whole yard. When you're all the ones that did a preliminary year there, kind of got thrown into the fire for our first intern rotation.
Oh, so, I bet. Do you remember what your first rotation was? Was it in the ER?
It was trauma.
It was trauma.
Yeah,
first month.
And I was on call on July 4th, and I don't know what they did where you went, but in Jacksonville they have a means of celebrating by shooting bullets straight up into the air.
Yes.
And we had 4 people that night struck by falling bullets.
Oh my gosh!
It was. All the senior people were in the OR, so by the end of the night, it was all the junior people that were doing the resuscitations.
Oh my gosh!
It was an exciting night.
That is crazy, Dave. That's nuts for your first weekend of being a resident in emergency medicine to do that level of care. Crazy times. Wow. So, anything else from residency that stands out, or you want to talk about? Or
going back, I hinted at this earlier, but UF had the contract with NASA for support. So they would once a year take us down and down to the Cape. They'd fly us down.
Wow.
We would go over, take classes, some of which were didactic. They would dress the suit techs up in the shuttle suits, and we would do things like, remove the helmets, remove the gloves, practice intubating the mannequin with the helmet on.
Wow.
And then we would go down for launches and landings, and because of scrub dates and other things, any one given launch or landing may end up in multiple opportunities, but you would go down, deploy at a couple different places. For launches, we could be as close as 1.5 miles to the pad.
Oh my gosh!
And it was really a unique and special opportunity to be able to do that.
Dude, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
I was there for both John Glenn's shuttle launch and landing, which was a big deal. They brought the president down for that.
Wow.
And to have the president there, we had to add to our launch team. We had to take Dr. Staples, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon, with us to ride in the motorcade in case the president got shot.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a really neat opportunity to be able to see those. The landings may not have been as dramatic, but one day the wind shifted, and normally we were quite a distance from the orbiter, but when the wind shifted, they brought him in the opposite way, and the orbiter flew right over us, landing, and it was just a really special thing. I've got some really cool pictures.
Yeah, that's incredible, Dave. Wow, that is so incredible. I mean, I know that other fact, when Peter Alexandrov hears this, I'm sure he probably already knows these stories from you, but my goodness, that is incredible. How can UF get back in the good graces of NASA and be able to do these kinds of things again? That's amazing.
Well, unfortunately, the contract has gone somewhere else. I will say that, NASA would put the contract out for bid for several years, and as long as they maintained manned spaceflight, the relationships were there between UF and the NASA docs. And quite frankly, they told us they preferred us, even though we got to be a farther distance from the Cape, and Orlando has developed quite a bit as a city, and also with their medical resources. But when manned spaceflight or when manned launches stopped at the Cape, a lot of those folks retired. We did put in a bid, and NASA came by and gave us a mini lecture because now the capsules can potentially land in the Gulf, and we might be in an alternate site. But it's pretty much transferred on to some Orlando-based folks.
I see.
For that kind of thing. But
wow. Well, you were there for that era, though. That is amazing. That is amazing. Wow. Well, cool. So after residency, you stayed with, like you said, you were with UF to the end, to the age. So then you started at University of Florida in Gainesville, correct, as a faculty member.
I did. Yeah. I was here for a couple of years. When I first came here, we were a division of surgery, which was interesting because the surgical senior residents thought they could come down and dictate to us what we would do for certain patients.
Wow.
Shortly after that, we got kind of transferred to the Department of Anesthesiology.
Oh, wow.
And they were a lot more supportive. And then actually we transitioned where UF Gainesville was a division of the program up in Jacksonville.
Interesting.
But the program finally divided and we became our own department.
And when was that, approximately?
That was prior to 1996.
Okay. And you started here in 93, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. You were here 3 decades, Dave. This is amazing accomplishment.
It's interesting. I took a short spin at Alachua General Hospital. I had 2 months in private practice in town and decided we took a lot better care. We could take a lot better care of folks here. Yeah. So I came back as soon as I could.
I gotcha. Well, we won't count that against you. Was Dave Roberts over there when you went and worked over there?
He was not, but
he was not. Yeah.
There were a lot of other folks who were around who've been into North Florida and some of the surrounding EDs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet you. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people that lived here just probably worked at a couple different places or
Yeah.
bounced around some. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so it's nice to hear that history that, and kind of as a younger person in emergency medicine, like a younger practicing emergency doctor, you hear about the times when emergency medicine wasn't given its respect and was part of other departments, and especially I felt like there's some tension even in my residency program between not currently, but in the past between surgery and emergency medicine. And it's nice to hear though that anesthesia was supportive, because I know that part of what we do at the time encroached on their airway,
Yeah.
domain. And so it seems like things, went fairly smoothly here, huh? After the initial, I
Well,
guess, with the surgery.
we certainly had our growing times, but
Sure.
the chairman or the appointed EM chairman was anesthesia critical care, and I think spending time down here gave him a different perspective. There was a time when, to do rapid sequence intubation, we had to consult and have anesthesia come be in the room when we did it, but that went away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's nice. And I'm sure they appreciate that now too, that we don't have to call them every time we
Yeah.
we sedate somebody. So what? Okay, so see the 90s, and then I mean, I'm just trying to think anyone else in the department was who. Is there anyone? I have already interviewed Jennifer Light for the podcast, and she was a wonderful wealth of information. But she came, what, late 90s was it? When did
Jennifer was here when I came here.
Oh, she was here already. Oh, she was late,
Yeah.
what, early 90s or late 80s even, huh? Okay.
Yeah, she
Right.
was here.
Okay.
There were some other folks who I don't think anybody here probably really remembers, but Charlie Lukey was another longtime person. He had worked at AGH, and when the hospital merged, he came here. Judy Lucas, at one point in time, the pediatric ER was over at Alatra General, and then when they consolidated the two hospitals, certainly Judy and some of the others came over.
Yeah. And Judy was the one who recommended that I talk to Dr. Light about her experience, and then Dr. Light talked about Judy as one of like her first hires in terms of bringing her on and early on. So that's interesting. It's all like full circle. Wow. And then, okay, so then, the two thoughts. And also the other thing that I just wanted to kind of just get your perspective on is just how things have changed so much, right? I mean, my spouse is from Gainesville, and she grew up here, and I've kind of learned through her when she was a patient as a child in the University of Florida Shands system, and from her parents. And it just seems like things have really, changed so drastically in terms of growth. And I don't know, can you comment on that in terms of the perspective you have?
It's interesting. Medicine really has changed over the years. I'll sound like an old man, but I remember, in medical school, when the emphasis was sitting down and talking to the patient, make sure that you were, not standing over the patient to do things. And now there's just such a focus on metrics and volumes and times. And I sometimes think that the patient is no longer the center focus. There's just such a rush to see this one and get to the next one. There doesn't seem to be as much of laying hands when you do an evaluation of the patient over telemedicine. You don't lay hands on the belly. You don't listen to things, and then you order multiple CT scans and multiple laboratories. But I think it's the culture of medicine, and that is perceived as more value by trying to see more patients per unit time. And then I guess there seems to be a lot bigger focus on people getting their care. People have always sought care through the emergency department. But as we're seeing now, I think, more and more of that, as well as particularly here at UF, we're seeing more and more complicated patients. Patients who can't obtain care elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Are told to just go to Shands.
And we have this reputation, of being able to handle everything, which is a good reputation. But like you're saying, we get all comers, right? And complicated and sick people, which is a good thing. But it definitely, we feel the load, Yeah. And then I had Dr. Light talk about this to some degree, and how things started on the north side of Archer Road, right? It was a one tower hospital, and that hospital was all completely built. I'm not sure when that was built, but it was all here when you came here, right, in the 90s.
Yes, it was here. It was here when I was in medical school, and it was there. There were 15 rooms in what is now, or 15 beds, because a couple of those rooms had multiple beds, but there were 15 of them. In what's now the pediatric ED. And then just as time went, we took over more and more office space, turning it into clinical space. And then there's certainly whatever the PGD footprint is now.
I can't even imagine trying to see our patient volume in 15 beds, like all the peds, all the adults, all the stuff we see at the freestandings. That was all channeled through 15. Now, granted, obviously the volume was much less, but that just is an idea, gives me an idea of where we were into where we are now. It's unreal.
Yeah.
And then so they built the South Tower, and they moved the adult ER over to the south side.
Yes.
And what was that? Do you remember or no?
I worked the last 7 to 3 shift in the adult ED, or in the North Tower ED as we made the transition. So I was kind of proud of that. I kind of shut that down. It was kind of interesting. The plan was to, at 7:00, throw the switch, and all ambulances, all new patients, were to go to the South Tower. The PGD at that time was in the South Tower. It didn't bounce back to the North Tower till after they remodeled.
I see.
So they shut down the North Tower ED, remodeled it, and then opened it up for the PGD.
I gotcha. Okay.
Like at 10 minutes to 7, there was a pediatric code came in.
Oh,
and
my
the
goodness.
Peds docs ran across the street to the adult ED, because that's where to the South Tower, because that's where the patient arrived. And then we tried to dispo and get out whatever patients we had in the North Tower, and ended up transferring what we could, admitting what we could, and then closing the door.
Wow. End of an era there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. And that, from what Dr. Light was saying, that would have been when Dr. Tyndall was the chair person, correct?
No, that was
before.
A long time before that.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I take it back. Dr. Tyndall was there when we made the transition.
Okay. I gotcha. Okay.
Dr. Seberg, who was chairman in Jacksonville, came down here and went to be dean elsewhere.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Kind of set up began the project, but Dr. Tyndall did complete the project.
Gotcha.
And you are right. Dr. Tyndall was here at the time of the transition.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, cool. Okay, so then, bringing us forward, when did the EMS, and this kind of goes to the conversation when I was having with Justin Sauter, our chief resident, about the fellowship match that happened a couple months ago, but at this point, when did you get involved with the EMS when did the EMS fellowship start, and when did you get involved with that, or how did you get involved? I mean, obviously your interests aligned perfectly. So tell me about that experience.
Well, I guess we're on our 11th class now. So,
oh, cool.
Whatever the math is,
that's backwards.
That's when it was. Jason Jones, who's our fellowship director now, was in our first fellowship class.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being an old man like I am, I had not done an EMS fellowship. I had just done a lot of EMS.
Exactly.
And they had brought in Christine Van Dillen, who did an EMS fellowship in Orlando to be the first program director. And she certainly had the ability and the determination to write up a PIF and a lot of other things. I'm not sure that I would have had the skills and the talent to get done. So she was a real driving force in that. I kind of was on faculty, and the two of us pretty much taught the early fellows. Me based on my clinical experience, her based on her fellowship. Like a lot of new specialties, they allow you to grandfather in for a couple of years. So I was able to take the first EMS boards. And passed.
Nice.
The first time through.
That's great.
I believe I was the first one here. But I think also Dr. Holtzman took the same test. Maybe my letter just came a day or two before his. I don't know. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Right, whether it was the Postal Service, I think I got my envelope first. I don't know.
That's right. Oh, that's funny. No, that's great though. So yeah, you were here from the beginning from the EMS fellowship, and I was at some point I was talking to Dr. Rohit Patel, and it seems like so it sounds like the EMS fellowship is one of the earlier fellowships here at UF. I'm not sure if critical care was the same time or after before, but it seems like it's one of the longer standing ones that we've had.
Well, it was kind of interesting when I came here. We had a PGM fellowship.
Really? Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Did not know that. Unfortunately, the guy that ran that program got hired up to South Carolina. Greenville, South Carolina. I see. And that one way. But for the first couple of years I was here, we had a PGM fellowship here.
Wow.
And that was fun and interesting.
Yeah.
We had a particular pediatrician whose name was John Carter. Right at the same time, John Carter was on the TV show ER, and he was quite a character. And there were Rosemary Fisher and some others. So we had a fellowship for a little while. It went away, and then
that's cool.
Then it came back.
Yeah, I did not know that. So that would have been the first.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then it seems like the EMS fellowship is clearly done very well, given that you have 11 classes, and also just I don't know a ton about it, but in our department now we have all of these different faculty members who are directors of all the different surrounding counties of their EMS programs.
Yes, that was I think part of Dr. Tyndall's vision was to support that, and not necessarily as a money-making issue, but as a wise thing to do, both as a community service, and as a way to have influence and interest over the care and the quality of care that is provided locally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's just the amount of dissemination of best practices and training and all that. Wow, just think of the catchment area that we are able to influence and to lift up and improve in evidence-based ways. I mean, that's really remarkable. How many counties are there?
I'll have to punt on that one.
That's all right.
I know there's a lot. I have I have my narrow focus. I really am interested in the air medical and
interesting.
And so, but I think that's one of the things that really brings to our fellowship. EMS has many options. there's anything from tactical to air medical to just to hazmat, search and rescue. There's just a lot of different subspecialty and special operations EMS, and we've been fortunate to keep people here who have an interest in here. Mm-hmm. So as our fellows are sometimes told on the first day, they get shown a picture of, I don't know whether it's the buffet or something at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And you can literally come here and said, this is what I would like to do. Yeah. And we can kind of provide you with a program and a learning experience. You can come here and be a generic EMS doc and EMS medical director. If you want to have some specialty training, we also have the opportunities so you can go out of here with those experiences.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then also, I mean, I'm just thinking back to, Dr. Jason Jones saying, oh yeah, you want to come and work a University of Florida football game with 100,000 people. Like, oh my gosh, like event medicine. There's another one, right? I mean, there's all sorts of these different.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And there are events that happen everywhere across the nation. Everybody looks at, the football players that went down with the VFib arrest, and that whole system was focused on just what goes on the field. Here you get an experience dealing with the 90,000 people that aren't on the field. And
we're all sober, correct?
On occasion, but I won't swear to it.
No.
I was working, it was September 10th, 2011. It was like a day short of the 10-year anniversary. And there was a lot of things going on in town. There was unrest. There was threatened to be a lot of things going on. I was the hazmat medical team director there, and you don't realize this, but around the stadium we have monitors that detect various things: radiation, volatile organics. Wow! And I remember seeing one particularly intoxicated fan for the opposing team from Tampa, not naming names, but USF. But you're right. he went staggering by enough that we all kind of snickered and looked at him. He went over to one of the poles and was holding on to it for his balance, and he was exhaling so much alcohol, it was setting off the volatile organic sensor. And he had to shortly be taken from the stadium because he was just too intoxicated.
Oh my gosh, that's a good story. Well, luckily you were there to notice that it was an intoxicated fan and not something that was more sinister. So
yeah,
that's good. I like that. So, speaking of like other, I mean, gosh, besides the, your EMS pursuits, you've talked about diving, you've talked about space, which is super interesting and cool. And then there's also like, you have some interest in, I've kind of read, or you have interest in kind of like almost like wilderness medicine topics, and then toxicology. How did you get? I mean, you really have a lot of specialties here, or places that you have, spent your time learning.
Well, I think it just echoes emergency medicine, which is just such a broad scope.
Yeah.
I may not admit to the fact that I decided sometimes as a resident, when they wanted you to speak or pick a topic, I figured I could pick something that was really obscure, and there would be less likely that I would be asked a question by another subject matter expert who knew more than I did.
That's so smart, Dave.
So maybe that was kind of part of that. But like I said, working with EMS, there was hazmat. There was hazmat with the space program, working aviation medicine. It doesn't happen often, but part of the preparedness is, if you have to put the helicopter down in a field and wait for them to come get you. And nowadays it's much better with satellite tracking and cell phones. But, back in the old days, if you sat down in a field, it could be a while before they figured out, when they last knew where you were and what direction and what speed, and they would come look for you. So that was kind of the wilderness. And if you're talking about fellowships, I am not a fellow of wilderness medicine, but for individuals that want to, start their career and don't want to take a couple of years off, a year or two off to do a fellowship, you can become a fellow in wilderness medicine by taking CME and certain things, attending, and then a lot of folks like to travel, do international medicine. Maybe they'll go on vacation to some famous places in the world, but will donate a day or two to be in a clinic to care for some folks who may not have some access to care. So that's the wilderness end of it. And the other thing, toxicology, again, that's probably an overlap of hazmat and some other things. But that was,
and
I had go ahead.
I was going to say, I saw you got a Master's of Science just a couple of years ago in clinical toxicology here at UF.
Yeah, I had mixed feelings when I graduated residency. My wife certainly was ready for me to start earning a full-time salary, and we had moved to Gainesville. And because this is not my first career, I'm older and, wanted to get started down some paths. And, my midlife crisis was going, gee, could I have done a toxicology fellowship, which they did have at Jacksonville. I looked into it. And unfortunately, they shut down their MD portion. They still had their PharmD portion.
Oh, interesting.
But here at UF, there was an online clinical toxicology fellowship. And, they had some interesting courses like in weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, biologic. I mean, some of the things from a disaster standpoint in EMS I was really interested in. And it was something that I could take a class or two per semester. I think I would take every couple of semesters I'd take off so that we could go on vacation. But it took a couple of years to do, but it was fun. It was really interesting. It challenged me intellectually. And I look at people who I call real toxicologists, people like Lynn Ferrugia and Judy Lucas also did a tox fellowship. And sometimes I'm in awe of how much more they seem to know or remember. And then there's other times when it's in the middle of the night and, somebody's, short of breath because they've been stripping some furniture with methylene chloride. And, I go, hey, let's check our carboxyhemoglobin level, and pitching, it's there. And, there's a lot of fun things, a lot of doors it's opened.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is like you mentioned, notoriously very, one of the more, what I've heard, at least one of the more, I guess, maybe challenging of the fellowships, and really rigorous, intellectually.
I think
correct?
so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. But you're right. You make a great point. All your interests kind of dovetail together and fit within the realm of, excuse me, of EMS and the care that you provide. So, all right. So let's move on to personal. How do you spend your free time? Families, any family, hobbies, restaurants? What do you do in your time away from work?
Yeah, being an older kind of person now, I have grown children, and we have a 2-year-old grandchild.
Oh, that's sweet.
My son is a deputy for Alachua County, and
nice.
He works nights. My daughter-in-law works days as a nurse practitioner in the trauma unit.
Wow.
So every so often when they're both working, we're playing grandparents, and that's kind of fun.
Oh, that's great.
Try to make it to the beach at least once a year. And I love to fly kites. I have an extensive kite collection.
Really?
That I've collected over 30 years. But
really?
Yeah, that's a really kind of fun thing to do.
No, absolutely. Don't go on there, because I'm very intrigued by that. That is really neat. Some of my best memories as a child were when my father brought home like a really elaborate kite and we flew it. And of course, inevitably it got stuck in a tree. But that is a neat hobby.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
I don't know. I guess it was being in Florida and going to the beach and buying a couple of cheap kites and then trying. They're just a whole bunch of different ones. I'm just a single line kite guy. You can get into the fighting kites and the steerable kites, but no, I just I learned. I remember in Jacksonville losing a very favorite kite to a kite tree. So I do almost all my flying now out on the beach, which limits, I guess, the number of trees. And
also good wind there, right?
Yeah. You have to be careful. I've had a few go for a swim, depending on which way the wind goes and whatnot. But yeah, I really enjoy that. I think some people go fishing just because it's an excuse to stand there and hold the line and be outside and breathe the fresh air. So I say I'm just fishing in the air, not in the water.
That's great. And what's your favorite kite? Your favorite one or one? Give me one. I mean, you probably have more than one, but is there one that you really like? And what is it? Like, what does it look like? Or
I don't know. The go-to if the winds are really kind of squirrely is like some sort of delta kite.
Okay.
I really like things that are called soft kites. Things like there are some sled kites, and there are also some parafoils they just inflate with the wind like a parachute. But you got to have a pretty steady wind. You can't have something that inflates the kite and the wind goes away, because then you lose your foil.
Okay.
I've got kites that will fly in almost no wind, and I've got kites that if you're not wearing gloves, they're gonna burn your fingers.
Wow.
Just because they pull so hard. They're just large lifting kites. And just a lot of different ones that are just, I don't know, just.
This is a cool hobby, Dave. This is something, this is like the hidden gem, the treasure. I mean, you've had a lot of hidden gem, but this is like, to me, I love that you are a kite enthusiast and flyer. I think that's so neat. So, but I interrupted you. You were going to say some other things too. But you say,
as I'm winding down in my career, and we were talking about what we do, my words of advice to folks starting off is make time to take time, because you'll get busy. But if you don't schedule time to get away from work, from the office, with those you care about, you'll find that you're a very, very busy person. You might make a few more bucks, but not always. And, like I said, make time to take time and then follow through with it, so that, you'll be happier at work, you'll be happier at home. And that's the one thing I wish I had taken my own advice for many years ago.
That's incredible wisdom. I would say I didn't hear, except I always like to ask this last little question to my guests. And aside from the people that we surround ourselves with here at UF, is there anything else that's special or unique about the University of Florida Department of Emergency Medicine?
Just in retrospect, you said the people, and the people are so important. It's much better to work with people that you trust, and you just feel better coming to work and going from work. And then just the opportunities. I know we've talked about just all sorts of opportunities here at UF that I've been grounded around my EMS interests, but there are others that have other interests, and it's just a place that has a lot of opportunity, and I'm very grateful and appreciative for all the opportunities I've had between EMS, between the flight program, between a little bit of hyperbarics, and all those other kind of things, which I'm not so sure, and not knocking anybody, but I'm not so sure would be available to folks in a community hospital. Although I throw my advertisement out there, even if you're in a community hospital and you like wilderness medicine, you can do that too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not casting aspersions on anybody.
Well, that's well said, Dave. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. That's all for this episode. Special thanks to our chair, Dr. Mary Patterson, for supporting this podcast, and to Dr. Giuliano DePortu for composing our theme music. I'm Michael Petrauskas. Be well.